Flashback.
Rufio. Flashbacks.
All day I've had this strong desire raging from within. You can say that my heart's on fire.
Somewhere between.
Keep your hands on me where I can see them, man.
Hey, it's 21st century, man. I don't know what I can do.
Flashbacks.
You are a sick individual and you need to be put out of your misery. Flashback.
Well, hello, everybody out there in podcast land, and welcome to the Front Row Network's Flashbacks, where we get all nostalgia-like about movies from our past. Movies from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s that have shaped the way we looked at cinema and pop culture today, and how those movies have given us insight and hope into our everyday lives. If you've ever thought about traveling through time powered by Huey Lewis, a Delorean, and the power of love, then you've been thinking about the timeless 80s staple, Back to the Future. That's right, we're talking about Marty McFly and Doc Brown. But before we get onto that, we have to introduce the crew for tonight. It's kind of a very special episode because we've got everybody here. I am Ryan Lootens, and with me tonight is...
Jay Hoffman.
And the granddaddy of them all, the guy that started Flashbacks.
It's like they got a DeLorean and went back to 2018 and pulled me back. Because I haven't been around. I'm Scott. Hi.
Scott, welcome back, The Godfather. It's been since December since you've been back. You've been a busy guy, so we appreciate it. But all three Flashbacks hosts are here tonight, and we're talking about a classic flashback. We're talking about Back to the Future. This is a movie that has been done before on the podcast, but in that episode,
Kinda.
Scott, if I remember correctly, you talked about all three movies, right?
It was like our second flashback, so it was terrible. Just move on.
Okay, well, we are going to break down this movie. We're going to talk about it as a flashback, but before we do that, Jay's going to give us the rundown. Go ahead, Jay.
All right, the year's 1985. The kid from Family Ties is meeting up with his best friend, a septuagenarian nutty professor, at a mall parking lot at 1 a.m. in the morning for reasons unknown. Upon meeting with the doc, he discovers that Doc Brown has discovered that time travel is possible as long as you have a flux capacitor, a coked-up ride, and terrorist-provided plutonium. Unfortunately, the terrorists come back for revenge, and Marty McFly drives the time machine to escape, all the way back to 1955. Upon arriving, he unintentionally prevents his parents from ever meeting while almost hooking up with his mom. Then he's forced to get his parents together for his survival, all while working with the 1955 version of Doc Brown to get himself back to the future. There's also a rapey bully named Biff that wreaks havoc throughout the film, and he really hates manure.
Well, thank you for giving us that great play-by-play. But before we take our deep dive, let's just look at the movie as a whole. Scott, you've got some facts about the movie?
Yeah, they're labeled as fun facts. I'm not entirely sure how fun they are, but let's try. First off, of course, we had a meeting with the Bobs. We have Bob Zemekis and Bob Gale, who kind of ran this show, and I'm sure we'll talk about them more later on, and the fact that these guys kind of ran a tight ship putting this all together, and it's one of the most well-edited movies from start to finish, and one of the reasons why is because these guys really put some time and effort into this thing. And then, of course, with the producers, we have some namesakes that continue to this day with Steven Spielberg, Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy, who still has a job with Disney, questioning why, but still does. Neil Catton and Bob Gale again. And, of course, we have playing Marty, Eric Stoltz, who did an amazing job playing Marty. Oh, wait, never mind. I'm sorry. Stoltz. I'm sorry. Has anyone seen the deleted scenes with Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly?
I don't think they're released yet.
Oh, they're on YouTube. There's some on YouTube. It's fun to watch because you could he's playing it like, all mellow teen, and it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, I could go through the list of people who are in this, but everyone knows the cast at this point. We have our first of two Jennifers in this.
The one I hate, unfortunately, but I'll get into that.
You don't like Leah Thompson?
No, she's fine.
Oh, no, that's Mom. Never mind.
Yeah.
God, see, I'm failing already. But I think the big thing here, and the reason why we're still talking to this today, is this thing had a budget of $19 million and grossed $211 million in the U.S. and 391 million worldwide. And it is probably one of the highest rated critically films of the 80s. I don't have a list in front of me, but with a 98.6% critical score, I think it is one of the highest rated. And it's interesting that we're talking about a movie from 1985. I noticed, I saw a news article last week because, we're in the apocalyptic hell that we are in right now. Do you guys know what the top grossing movie of last week was?
Back to the Future.
Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, Empire Strikes Back is this week. I was saying next week. Ghostbusters, 1984.
Oh.
The year before this. So everything is old is new again because we can't make anything new because we're all, in a post-apocalyptic hell state. Go ahead.
Well, I mean,
that's all I got.
If we watch all those old movies, I mean, it's gonna give us time. That's all we got because we can't make anything new. This film ranked number 20 on an Entertainment Weekly list of 50 best high school movies. In 2008, readers of Empire voted Back to the Future the 23rd greatest film of all time. It is also placed on a similar list by the New York Times, a list of 1,000 movies. It was 69. Never mind. Scratch that. In January 2010, Total Film included this movie on the list of 100 greatest movies of all time. In 2007, it was actually selected by the Library of Congress because it's culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. In 2008, American Film Institute top 10 best film in classic American film genre. After polling more than 1,500 people from the creative community, Back to the Future was acknowledged as the 10th best film in the science fiction genre. Its Rotten Tomatoes score is 96. Audience preferred it with a 94%. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, winning 1 for Best Sound Editing. It was nominated for Best Sound, Best Original Screenplay. And good old Huey Lewis got a nomination for The Power of Love. It was nominated for 4 Golden Globes, Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy, so that's a big plus. Best Actor for Eric Stoltz, Michael J. Fox. Best Original Screenplay and Best Original Song. This is a movie that we're going to be talking about for quite some time. It celebrates July 3rd, celebrates its 35th anniversary. Let's get into it. Let's talk Back to the Future. Let's talk first memory of the film. Scott, you're the godfather. You go first. First time watching this movie.
And Ryan, I have to apologize. I failed in the first 5 minutes. You gave me 2 sheets of notes, and I read the first page and just shut up. So
that's all right. I got you covered.
Picking up the slack of me not knowing what the hell I'm doing. I appreciate it so much. As being, I don't know how old my other cohort here is, but I know Lootens is youngin.
We're the same age.
As Lootens? Okay. Well, so being the old dog here, I didn't get to see this in the theaters, but my first memory of this thing is probably VHS, of course, if not HBO. So probably, I would say probably 87, 88 is probably when I checked this thing out for the first time, if I remember right. And I always would fast forward past the 1955 scenes because they were boring to me as a kid. I just wanted when the DeLorean went off, and then I would fast forward basically to the end when, Doc doesn't get killed. And that was the movie for me for a long time. Not gonna lie.
Happy ending.
Yeah, I've always been a quality film connoisseur as I skipped the entire movie.
Well, you did it with notes. You do, it works.
All right, Jay, first thoughts, first memories when you saw Back to the Future.
I also didn't get the opportunity to see it in theaters because it came out 1 year and 27 days before I was born.
Shut up.
I can't tell you the first time. Like, it just feels like one of those movies I've always watched. Like, I have no recollection at all what the first time would have been. I know, like you said, HBO, TBS is like pretty much every movie we've talked about is on the TBS loop. And Back to the Future, the trilogy, all the time they were playing the trilogy. So probably there is where I first saw it. But I don't know. But to me, it's just, there's very few movies like that where I feel like they've always been like in my life. I think Wizard of Oz is another one like that. I couldn't possibly tell you, but I've always watched it and always loved it. And I think those two movies have a lot of similarities, and I think they're both very timeless movies. I think there's going to be forever generations of families watching both of them and enjoying them together. So first memory, TBS. It's got to be TBS. I'm going to share a real quick fond memory. 2010, they had the 25th anniversary showing, and that was before all the Fathom events at the theaters, where now they're showing anniversaries for literally everything. This one was like a big deal at the local theater, the Showplace 12 here. Everybody got a movie theater poster. They had trivia before, and everybody was just rowdy. And it was, I remember I skipped class to make sure I saw the 25th anniversary of Back to the Future. And I got to say, that was the most like electric viewing of that, because that was just a bunch of Back to the Future fanboys going nuts. So I wanted to share that one too.
Did you have a Strickland in your building that came after you because you skipped?
No, I was in college, so.
You know, you make a good point, though, with the Wizard of Oz reference. I've never thought of it before, but, you know, obviously when he first arrives in 55, he's dealing with the farmhouse. But really, his introduction to 55 is very Wizard of Oz-like. You know, he's down Main Street, Mr. Sandman's playing, and then we just kind of open up the entire world. So I bet you that Zemeckis took a lot from Oz on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jay, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I want to say TBS, but you're right. It's one of those movies, like, I can't remember the first time I've seen it because I've seen it so many times, you know? And it's a movie that does not get old. All three movies right now are on Netflix. You know, so I watched, to gear up for this podcast, I rewatched all three. But yeah, I honestly can't say when my first time viewing it was, but what I do remember, one thing that does stick out to me is that there would be TBS weekends where they would just play it on a loop. So I would get a little bit of 2 and then a little bit of 1, and you see 2, and then you're like, oh, what? You confuse them, and you're like, what's going on? And then, but I just remember knowing what that movie was at a very young age. And now that I'm more mature, you know, seeing the you know, how intricately woven everything was, really well done. And I can see why it confused, you know, my young self and maybe even my older self right now. But, you know, Jay gave us the rundown of the movie, but let's just talk about the movie. Let's talk about our favorite scenes. What do we like about the movie itself before we start talking about directors and cast and all that other stuff? What are our favorite scenes? What do we like about this movie? Jay, we'll start with you.
I'm going to give you 2 scenes. One, just that very introduction to the time machine. You know, there's mystery all around it. He's showing up 1 a.m, a mall parking lot. Doesn't know what the hell's going on. Even the slow reveal of the time machine, all the way up to where he actually takes it back to 1955. I just love that entire scene. And I wonder what that scene was like for the first audiences to see that in 1985. I mean, that had to have been absolutely mind-boggling how awesome that scene was. The other one I want to mention is the punch scene where George McFly thinks he's going to go punch out Marty, but in fact it's Biff.
Rapey Biff?
We're going to get into that. That stuff seems a lot more intense now than I remembered it.
There's a lot of rapiness in
It
this
is
movie.
heavy.
And it's not just one gender. We're going to get into it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Wow. But that scene where George, you know, finds the courage to stand up, and he totally transformed. Because the whole movie, he's scared of a little bit of challenge and failure, but he saw the fear in her eyes, and he knew he had to do something. And that scene's awesome. And then sidebar, anything with Leah Thompson, I think like little kid me still in love with her. So anything where she's
He likes all the right moves, don't you? She gets naked.
Everyone got the reference, and then you just had to throw in there, she gets naked. We all knew. We all knew.
You're welcome.
Here you go,
But-
NPR.
Hey, I haven't swore yet. But you mentioned the punch scene, and I love Crispin Glover in his one time in this franchise, and his just his delivery of "Hey, you get your damn hands off her!" Like he's practiced that for so long, and the bully gets his one-uppance. But what makes that scene is Alan Silvestri's score. And I don't know if I've ever said this on Flashbacks. I can't remember because it's been like 5 years since I've done one. But Alan Silvestri is my favorite composer. He has been around since forever. I think he probably sacrificed a small child back in the 80s, and so he will never age. But just the way that score just kind of crescendos right when the punch is thrown, it drives the rest of the film because we're now in Act 3 and moving forward, and it's a great. The whole scene is great.
Well, just you talk about the punch, and that's like the culmination of everything, and it proves that Marty has put everything back on track for a moment before we get to one of my favorite scenes. But just even Biff, the guy who plays Biff, brilliantly acted. I mean, I just wanted to jump in and just tear him apart, because while Leah Thompson, she always in Marty's future, which would be the present, his mom's very don't be aggressive, be a lady, and then we see her drinking and smoking, so we're like, oh, she's just a typical teen. But to Marty, it's like, oh my god, it's my mother. But then when you see Biff trying to take advantage of her, you just want to lay him out. And just to see Crispin Glover's face change, see Biff's reaction when he gets hit, everything in that scene worked. It was perfect. And then the love-struck eye in Leah Thompson's eyes, I think probably the best acting moment of the movie. I don't know. I diverge. Scott, what? Any other favorite scenes that you got?
Well, I agree with the ones that you just listed, but I think just the entire clock tower scene is great. It's, again, a masterful editing job, switching between several different scenes all at once. For almost all of Act 3, you've got Doc Brown trying to get everything figured out for the clock tower, but then you're also cutting back to the DeLorean. You're cutting back to a whole bunch of different stuff, and it's just really. It's really action-packed filmmaking for a movie that's not really an action film, but for those scenes, it's great. And then because I'm a sci-fi geek, I love when Marty goes to his dad's bedroom and I am Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan. And then later on, we find out that we didn't see this in the scene, but he said he was going to suck out his dad's brains if he didn't take his mom to the dance. So. Yep.
All right. So two scenes that I want to talk about. The whole dance sequence. The whole dance sequence was really spectacular. I cannot talk to save my life. It was excellent. Reason why is because Marty's parents have to kiss during this dance. And, we see the dance going on. Marty's losing the ability to play. We get some very generic CGI, but it works, because I don't think it's a movie that's supposed to be taken seriously because it is a science fiction film. But we're like, oh my God, someone's cutting in line. Marty's going to disintegrate. But then you see Crispin Glover come back, and it's really awesome. And, everything's all good and dandy. And so Marty's like, oh, let's play another. They want to play another song. And this is, what is it? Marvin Berry and the whatever. It's the name of the band. So all of a sudden he starts playing Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good, and everyone's dancing like crazy. And he just goes into this riff, and it's a fun scene. I don't know what you guys think about that. What do you guys think?
Your kids are going to love it.
Yeah, I would defend the CGI. I mean, it's 1985 when they did it. It's still better than some stuff you see today.
And I can see where the other money was spent. That's definitely for the time travel sequences when the car's lighting up. That's awesome. So at that point, I guess they maybe ran out of money. I don't know. Either way, it's fine.
Yeah, and we may talk about this later. My issue with that is not even really the special effects. I think, again, as you said, for 1985, 1984, when they made this stupid thing, it's really good special effects. My issue with that scene and a lot of the scenes going on is and this is just me being a sci-fi geek, they have not locked down the rules of their time travel. Because, at some points, if stuff doesn't happen right away, he starts disappearing. But in other times, things can happen that go wrong, but it's okay because we haven't gotten to the time loop yet and everything else. So it kind of frustrates me that, and I'm just nitpicking a film that has a 96% rating because, well, what else am I going to do for the next hour? But it's frustrating that they haven't really kind of taken the time to determine what their rules are for time travel. And
that's kind of one of the things I like.
Okay.
Well, I'll explain. Like, it's a time travel movie, but it's more focused on his journey than it is the time traveliness of it. And I think when you think of time travel movies, it's so easy to get bogged down. And then speaking of watching them, my kids are watching the second one right now, right before I came up, and my daughter's asking all these questions. I was like, just don't ask questions about time travel, and you're going to like this movie.
Where's my flying car,
Start asking
Dad?
questions. It's going to get rough.
So
I like that they didn't dive into that just because I think they were able to focus on the journey more.
Yeah.
With that.
Another favorite scene is just the parking lot scene. I think everything about that was very well done. Like Jay, you said, the introduction of the DeLorean, and it's all exposition. It's explaining everything before we get into the meat and potatoes of the film. But when you're watching it, there's a lot of drama to it. I mean, these terrorists come after Doc Brown because he said that he was going to build a bomb for them, but really he just wanted the plutonium for his time machine. They come after him, they kill him. And then a chase happens. So you're getting a lot of action. You think you're watching a sci-fi moment, but you stepped out and you are watching a drama and then an action sequence. And it's just crazy that this movie has it all, because not only that, this movie was nominated for Best Comedy. I mean, there's a lot of comedy in this film. But just that scene right there, I mean, it was excellent because it brought you out of the sci-fi mode and into like a movie experience, which was awesome. I don't know
that's one of the quintessential Christopher Lloyd line deliveries. He's got there's only one Christopher Lloyd, and when he screams out "the Libyans," it's great.
Can we talk before we jump into likes, dislike? Another thing that I just thought about. I had written it down, but I have it down on my thing because me and Jay talked about we were going to make talking points. But the Peeping Tom scene. We talk about this movie being a comedy. But, earlier we get the expose of, your dad was bird watching and he fell out of a tree and my dad hit him and I just, I fell in love with him because I wanted to take care of him. Well, we find out that his dad's a Peeping Tom. So he follows his dad. His dad's up with his binoculars looking into a girl changing and he goes, he's a Peeping Tom. And then he goes and saves his dad from being hit, and that's where everything kind of goes crazy and funny, because then he gets woken up by his mom who's checked out his underwear. I think the comedic tone is just really set in that span of, just that moment. I don't know.
Well, that's one of the fun things about this movie is, we all have those stories from our family members in the past, but we all know that those stories have been watered down by loss of memory and filtering what you want people to know happened and what really happened. So it'd be fun to go back and even in our lifetimes to go back to those memories that we have and realize how much we filter them, let alone our parents filtered what's going on.
That's a solid point. Maybe that's something we can bring up again on Impact. Does anybody else have any scenes they want to discuss? Things that they really, really like? No? All right. Likes and dislikes. What do we like about this movie as a whole? This is probably the part of the podcast where we're probably going to spend the most amount of time, because me and Jay were talking earlier, and our dislikes are very, very. It's a stretch. It's a stretch. This movie got 96 on Rotten Tomatoes for a reason. So let's just talk about what we like. I'm going to go first, and I'm just going to say the cast. Can we not say that this movie is probably the best cast movie of the 80s? I don't know. You got Michael J. Fox as Marty, Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, Leah Thompson as his mom, Luann, Crispin Glover as his father, George, Tom F. Wilson as Biff, Claudia Wells as Jennifer, James Tolkien as Strickland, and Billy Zane as one of Biff's knucklehead henchmen. This
But
You're
really,
way too excited about Billy
Yeah,
Zane.
Billy Zane is in the movie for about 5 seconds. And he's
We
so
should do the
yeah.
Phantom sometime.
Oh,
should.
that's actually I will stand
It's on
behind
my-
that film.
It's on my Amazon. I gotta watch it.
The Phantom and The Shadow both are underrated superhero movies.
So Billy Zane.
Billy Zane is a Bamf in Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. He is an excellent bad guy in that movie. But I digress. This cast,
Of all, okay, I agree. Demon Knight's a fun movie. I haven't seen it in probably 20 years, but of all of the Billy Zane movies you can pull, you pulled Tales from the Crypt.
Demon Knight, not Bordello of Blood, Demon Knight.
Dude was in Titanic, and you pull Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment.
He was also a good villain in Titanic. There, are you happy?
I'm not. I don't disagree with you. It's just deep pull, man. Deep pull.
Scales, scales of quality.
Now
Right.
I kind of want to watch Demon Knight again because it's actually a really good movie.
It really is. All right, this cast. Eric Stoltz was originally cast, and then he left. Why did he leave? I forget.
He wasn't
was
any
doing
good.
Terrible. He was
Okay.
doing terrible. He didn't leave. He was fired.
Okay. So luckily we have Family Ties coming up with Michael J. Fox. But no, it's just something about this cast that just really, really works.
This is. I should have said this earlier, Jay, when you were talking about Family Ties in your synopsis, and you said he's there with his best friend Doc Brown. I was like, his best friend Ronald Reagan. For those who've actually watched Family Ties.
Right.
Yeah, a very
He plays a
conservative,
conservative.
nerdy guy. Yeah.
Where his parents, Michael Gross, is a liberal hippie.
And then shoots trimmers, right?
Yeah.
Graboids.
By the way, go check out the Tremors episodes from earlier in the
From
year.
Flashback. You see what I did there? You see how I came back?
You'll find those in the show notes.
Right.
Do we have show notes?
Sure.
All right. Cast. What do we got to say about the cast?
I think when I watched the Back in Time documentary. It's on Hulu right now. The first half's good, then the last half gets into fandom and it's a little weird. But they talk about Stoltz because he was there for 6 weeks of shooting, so he had shot like almost the entire movie, a huge chunk of the movie. And Robert Zemekis said, I just kept shooting, hoping it was eventually going to work. He said it just didn't work.
It's kind
And
of like
they, what was it?
I was gonna say it's kind of like the employee that you don't want to fire. You just keep hoping they'll make it.
Yeah. Well, they said like the first hour Michael J. Fox was on, everyone was like, "Oh, that's how it's supposed to be."
That's how you're supposed to act.
And they
Got
said
it.
they just said the comedy did not work with him, and just like the second Michael J.
Yeah.
Fox, and not only that, but just the overall attitude on set, they said completely changed. And I listened to an interview with Tom Wilson, Biff, and he had nothing good to say about Eric Stoltz. He said he was the biggest jerk, and he said that he would get very physical in the very few actual physical scenes they had. And he said he was waiting for that scene to rip him out of the car. And he said he wanted to be method. I was going to show him what method was about. So I was going to get paid to do it too. But he got fired. He got fired before they got to that scene. And I can't imagine anyone on the planet other than Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. Like I can't imagine anybody. Those two specifically. I can't imagine any other human being being able to pull those characters off.
You mean Kruge, the Klingon?
Yeah. And so Jay, I'm glad you brought that up because we kind of posed that. We did that for Bad Boys. We said who would fit this role better, and we did have for Bad Boys who would direct it, but for this one, if you could think about it, if you're listening, let us know who you think could be a better Marty McFly or Doc Brown, because I can't think of one. I've got nothing.
To your who would direct Bad Boys, can I just say one thing?
What?
And that is, if I will allow Michael Bay to direct as many Bad Boys as he'd like. I know he didn't direct the last one, but still, I will let him direct as many as he likes if he never touches the Transformer franchise again. Go ahead and direct as much as you want. Just don't touch Optimus Prime ever again.
But I digress again.
That was me digressing, actually.
Okay.
Bumblebee, man, that was good.
Yeah.
No,
Michael
because
Bay.
Michael Bay had nothing
No
to
Michael
do
Bay.
with it.
And the third Bad Boys was good. Again, not Michael Bay.
Okay, real quick story, just because you mentioned Bumblebee, and I love to make Ryan say digress. So I'm sitting in the theater for Bumblebee, and I'm the only one in the theater from my family because I sent my daughter and my wife to go watch Mary Poppins 2. So at the very end of the movie, Bumblebee drives off, and you see the iconic 1984 Optimus Prime semi. And there's a kid sitting close to me. He turns to his mom and goes, "What was that truck at the end?" They kept showing the truck. I was like, "That was Optimus Prime." That wasn't Optimus Prime. I was like, "Ignore everything you know, child. Just ignore everything and start over. It'd be fine."
So the best thing about this cast is they actually get this cast to come back for every single movie except for Crispin Glover and Claudia Wells. Now, Crispin Glover, I know it was financial, right?
Oh, it's several things. The dude's crazy.
He is. I mean,
If you want to go down a rabbit hole, just search Crispin Glover on YouTube and all his interviews. The dude believes that he is a genius, and he very well may be, but he is one of those guys who wants to let you know that he's a genius, and therefore he will show you that he's a genius.
And lose jobs.
Yeah, so he exactly. So he'll say that Bob Zemeckis didn't direct it well, didn't give him the ability to kind of look into the character. He didn't like how the character was dealt with, and then he'll also say that he didn't like the way it ended because he felt there was no character arc, because we go from a down on his luck dad to somebody who's a novelist who has buku bucks, and there's no arc there for him.
but it's
But
not
really
a
what you're-
story. It's not a story. It's Marty's story.
Well, that's another thing I'll bring up in a minute, because I disagree with you on that. But really what it comes down to is, you're right, it's money. But Crispin Glover doesn't want to say that, so he'll say that, there's
Bob
so much
Zemeckis is
more.
a terrible director.
Yeah.
Claudia Wells. Okay, so I'm not the biggest Claudia Wells fans. I know that, I was talking to Jay, and he seems to like her. But why did she get out, dude? I had to look her up. I had no idea who she was. She doesn't really have that big of acting credits.
I don't know the story.
If I remember right, and I haven't watched it, I mean, I used to watch documentaries on this stuff a lot, but if I remember right, with her, it was truly a scheduling thing.
Yeah.
But, even at that point, when they finally got Elizabeth Shue, they kind of put her in the fridge for part 2 and 3 anyway. But I think what was happening was, if I remember right, in the original script for part 2, Jennifer had a lot more to do. And so they went to the actress, and she was booked up for something else. So they went to Elizabeth Shue, and then they changed the script anyway.
Good to know. Let's talk about the most underrated performance. James Tolkien plays Strickland. He was in Master of the Universe. We all have a teacher like that is just so disciplined, and just so extreme, like just set in his ways. But this guy nails it. I love James Tolkien and anything he does.
I was making fun of you for pulling Demon Knight, but if you told me, name a movie this guy's in, it's not Back to the Future, it's not Back to the Future 2 or 3. It is Masters of the Universe.
Yes!
Because I freaking love, I'm being very good NPR, I freaking love Masters of the Universe. That movie is way underrated.
Yes, I agree. 100%. All right.
That's one description of that movie.
Hi.
All right.
Hey.
Let's move on. Let's stop talking about the cast. Jay, give us a like.
Okay.
I got a lot. But
we got time.
I really think this is about as close to a perfect movie for me as you can get, and it just, every part of it's a very intentional movie. Every shot of every frame, there's small little things throughout there that are just planting seeds all throughout. Right, very first scene of the movie, you have all the clocks on the wall, which is just a great way to enter a time travel movie. But there's a clock that replicates, it's got an image of a man hanging from one of the minute hands, hanging. It's Buster Keaton from a movie called Safety Last, very famous scene of him hanging off of that clock off the top of the building. And then at the end of the movie, you have Doc Brown replicating that scene. And there's just all throughout the movie, there's that little stuff. And then the way they push the exposition right there at the beginning, like I said, they're not bogged down in the time travel and the science, but they tell you exactly what everything is. And even the first home scene where you see Lorraine as this very depressed, she's a drunk, she's kind of overly conservative with her daughter and all that stuff. We see why she's that way when she goes back, how she was treated by Biff, how she wound up not really probably being in love with George, but feeling pity for him. And it led to this life of that. Like, so the whole movie is just so intentional, every single little scene. And it's crazy. I've seen this movie so many times, but every time I watch it, there's like, oh, holy cow, I didn't even catch that thing, whatever that thing is, you know? Every time I watch it, I see something new that's one of those seeds that gets planted. And I just, I think it's about as perfect of a movie as you can get.
I'm glad you said that because, like, and Scott alluded to this because Bob Gale and Bob Zemekis, they really hashed this out over the time frame, and we'll get into the discussion of did they plan 3 movies or was this something that they just kind of went for? But this movie was very expertly written. I mean, everything was thought out, and it was almost flawless. I'm going to say it was flawless, but like, in that time right before all the stuff happens, before Doc Brown gets shot, he talks about what it would be like to go back and, catch all the World Series and then bet on them. That's the plot for the second movie. And then when Doc Brown sees the Libyans and they're coming after him, he's got a Colt Peacemaker. That's the gun of choice in the third movie. So, I mean, it's just everything that comes back. I mean, these guys, they had it written and then they just reference everything, but it's the close attention to detail that these guys went into, because when Marty goes back, he goes into a farm, and that farm is a pine tree farm. And when he's finally escaping in DeLorean, there's 2 pines, and where he was in 1985 was Two Pines Mall. Well, in 1955, when Marty is escaping the farmer with the shotgun, he runs over one of the pine trees. When he goes back to save Doc Brown in 1985, after he's successful in 1955, the mall is no longer called Two Pines, it's Lone Pine. I mean, I never would have thought of that, but the express concern with detail is really fantastic in this movie. Good call, Jay. Scott, what do you got? What else?
Well, I'll go back to Jay real quick. I think probably the actor who does the most in this film and doesn't get enough credit is Leah Thompson.
Yes.
And really, I mean, you mentioned the family dinner scene in '85 before the time travel, and just the forlorn look on her face. She's talking about how that's when I met your father. Looks at him, he's just being a complete schmuck, and you can just see her like, I wasted my entire life.
Yep.
and it's just, the acting there is superb. So I would agree with you there. You hit on already the great kind of callbacks that they have throughout this. Twin Pine, Lone Pine. There's a few other ones in there too. But yeah, I think the one thing we haven't talked about, we've talked about the scenes that it's in, but we haven't talked about it, is the DeLorean itself. And the amount of the detail that they put into the DeLorean and making it look like this schlocky car that no one liked in the 80s could become this amazing time travel device. And it came a long way in the script between where they started to where they got to the DeLorean. Do you guys know some of the trivia on that, what it was going to be before it was a DeLorean?
What was it?
Oh, come on, guys. Come on. One was going to be a refrigerator.
Oh, yeah, the scene from Indiana Jones. That's where they got it, was the first draft. It
was going to be a refrigerator. And then another one was he was just going to drive a car into a nuclear test site when the nuclear bomb goes off. And then in that script version, to get back, they had to go to I think it was New Mexico or Arizona and try to find some testing of nuclear bombs. So it would have been a very different movie at that point. But I think the DeLorean to this day is a piece of pop culture. I mean, I don't think there's anyone alive who doesn't know Back to the Future, but if you don't know Back to the Future, you do know the DeLorean. So I think it stands out quite a bit for that reason.
Yeah,
and I love the fact that oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I have in my notes if you ever see a DeLorean, it's not a DeLorean, it's a time machine.
And the license plate back in time. Actually, Hasbro released just last week for the 35th anniversary a Transformer DeLorean, and the thing sold out in 5 seconds.
Wow.
They made 1,985 of those little bastards. And of course, my intent was to buy one for my kid because he's obsessed with Transformers, and it sold out in 5 seconds. Thank you, Hasbro. Yeah.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room here. You had brought it up that he had sacrificed a young child, but let's not talk about the theme song. The theme song is fantastic. Alan Silvestri created a fabulous score. He did all 3 movies, but this guy, he's been nominated for 2 Oscars. He should have been nominated. I think everybody at the Front Row Network agrees that this guy should have been nominated and won this past Oscar year for Endgame. But the fact that he's only been nominated for 2 Oscars is just mind-blowing because he's done a lot of great work, but he's been nominated for Polar Express and Forrest Gump. But really, I mean, this theme song is almost like what John Williams is for Jaws. Go ahead. Anybody want to talk about?
Yeah. What John Williams is for Jaws, Indiana Jones, Star Wars.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
But and John Williams has gotten his credit for that too, though.
Right.
But I think Silvestri's problem is that he is kind of a journeyman worker. Yes, he's done some, franchises that everyone knows, but he does so much work. He's done a lot of themes that you've never even heard before. His list of scores just goes for pages and pages. That I think people take him for granted. But you mentioned Endgame. It started with Avengers because he did Avengers 1 as well, but it's almost impossible to tie every little theme from those MCU movies into a coherent score. And he did it, and then he did it even better for Endgame. But I mean, the fact that he has not received the credit that is owed to him, I mean, he makes a lot of money, so I think he's okay. But I think he deserves some brass on his wall that he does not have.
I agree.
Yeah, and this song it's up there with all those other ones I jokingly mentioned. I mean, this was, oh my gosh, however many months ago, fellow Front Row Networker Steve Sykes, he said, I cannot think of the theme song to Back to the Future. And I just typed in Dum 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 Dum. And he goes, oh my God, I know what the song is. Just off the words.
Dun, 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 dun.
And I was like, I knew you would. I knew you would. Oh man. And this song pumps me up so much. But on the flip side, I also love the pop music in it too.
I was going to say, let's talk about Huey Lewis.
I went to see Huey Lewis at the 2008 Illinois State Fair. Big crazy concert.
Nice.
Specifically because I'm a fan of his because of this movie. Like,
did he play Power of Love? What Power of Love get nominated for Best Original Song? Has nothing to do with time travel, but it deals so much with the core of what the movie is.
Yeah. And it was written for the movie. Yeah. They asked him to write a song. He goes, how do I write a song about time travel? And they said, don't worry about that. And that's the song he wrote.
I mean, the theme of the movie is love and rekindling that love. And that's the power of love. And you don't think about it because it's just a catchy tune. It's a Huey Lewis song. But it really has a lot of deep roots.
I'm going to be the guy who says I actually like the second song by Huey in this movie, Back in Time, more than I like Power of Love. I think Back in Time is a better song.
I like them both.
Yeah, I like
And
both.
by the way, the winner of Best Score in 1985 was Out of Africa. So that's iconic, and it's continued on to this day. So it's fine.
Yeah, who composed that?
John Barry,
Oh God.
not Chuck Berry. John
Yeah, I
Barry.
was gonna say cousin, he's a cousin. They're cousins.
Well, really, when I think of Huey Lewis, I think of American Psycho and Hip to Be Square. But Power of Love is a very close second.
When I think of Huey Lewis, I think Ghostbusters. Oh wait, I think he's still making money off that deal, so it's fine.
All right, do we have any more likes that we want to talk about? Anything about this movie?
One thing we haven't mentioned, we talked about all the actors, but the guy that plays Biff is fantastic too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like the archetypical bully. He's so good in this. And you don't see him in much else, small bit roles, but he's so good in it.
But it's not just this movie. He plays the villain in all three.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
And he plays a different villain in all
right.
three.
And
Cowboy Biff is great.
And in different timelines. I mean, he plays 3 different variations of Biff in just Back to the Future. He plays corporate Biff at the very beginning. He plays high school Biff, and then he plays auto service Biff. I mean, it's just
the best.
Detail. He's a
detailer. Sorry.
Did you wax it twice, Biff?
He just got his matches in with his company.
He's so versatile in this movie. It's just crazy because there are 3 unique characters.
And with him, he's an interesting character. He doesn't really interact with the original cast that much. He does do the convention scene because, well, dude's got to make money. But he actually carries business cards on him. So if you go up to him and say, "Hey, weren't you that guy in?" he will hand you a business card and not say a word. You read it, it says, "Yes, I did play Biff in Back to the Future." And it has a list. You can Google this. It's amazing. Michael J. Fox is a nice guy. No, we still don't talk. And it's a list of all the answers to the questions he's received over the years because he doesn't want to answer them anymore. I'm gonna Google that because I want to read some of those. It's amazing. Hold on.
Are you continue talking? I'm gonna keep talking about this guy.
Well, that's a testament to his performance.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's memorable. That's why people ask that question.
But then, so he plays 3 roles. Back to the Future 2, he plays old version of him. He plays high school him. And then
Trump Biff.
He plays his Griff, his grandson.
He plays Donald Trump.
Trump Biff, yeah.
So, yeah, and then of course he plays Mad Dog in the third one. But I mean, it's the versatility of this guy.
Okay.
I think Mad Dog's his best one too.
Oh God, yes.
I agree.
We'll talk about that in sequel talk.
Yes, we will. Hey, okay, so I'm just going to take a moment and I'm going to read you the entire Biff Tannen business card because it's well worth it. So just bear with me. This is all on a business card.
Okay.
I'm Tom Wilson. I was in all 3 Back to the Future movies. Michael J. Fox is nice. I'm not in close contact with him. Christopher Lloyd is nice. He is a very shy man. Crispin Glover is unusual, but not as unusual as he sometimes presents himself. We got along nicely. Leah Thompson is nice. Eric Stoltz originally played Marty, but was fired due to performance issues. The first movie was shot in 1984 and 85. The sequels were shot back-to-back, never before attempted by a movie studio. The hoverboards didn't really fly. We were hanging by wires from a crane. The manure was made of peat moss, cork, dirt, and food against the agent that made it stinky. The Delorean was an inferior automobile and nearly impossible for a person of normal size like myself to enter and exit. There are many tiny plot points hidden in the movies, but I don't know what they are. Among many improvisations on the set, I coined the phrase butthead, as well as make like a tree and get out of here. The third movie was my favorite since I got to learn Western skills like riding, roping, quick draw, and shooting in 6-shooter, a great adventure for a guy from Philadelphia. I hold my coworkers in the best light, but have no idea what any of them are doing right now. Steven Spielberg was the executive producer of the movie, but Robert Zemekis directed it. Nobody had any idea that the movies would become a cultural touchstone, but the themes of the friendships and adventures moved the audience so powerful that I felt the need to create this postcard as a time saver. It was the first movie I acted in, if you don't count being killed in Kung Fu movie Ninja Turf. Love is more important than material possessions. I have made less money than you think. I don't talk about the movies much because I'm busy with stand-up comedy and music performances. Those performances aren't near as magnitude of the movies, but I find them enjoyable. And he just continues on. This is all printed on a business card. It's amazing.
That is awesome. That's
Crispin
fantastic.
Glover is unusual, but not as unusual as he puts on.
All right.
Stuff.
Shall we move on? All right.
Please.
Dislikes. I think this is going to be a stretch for everybody on here because this movie is damn near perfect. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a travesty that it was not nominated for more Oscars because it is a classic. Sorry, Brandon, but we're stealing this from you. So dislikes is a stretch. For me, Claudia Wells just her acting just kind of seemed bland to me. She just kind of seemed like she was just phoning it in. That's my only gripe. That's all I got. Scott, you got anything?
Yeah, you say it's going to be a stretch to find something wrong, but you forget that I am the jerk of the front row, so I can find stuff.
Take it away.
But no, I've already mentioned.
Last and let Jay go so we can open this can of worms.
Oh, I was just going to complain about the time travel again. So go.
Okay, go ahead. Just go ahead. Time travel.
No, I just again, and Jay, you make a very good point that this movie is not about time travel; it's about characters and all that. But I wish they would have taken just a little bit more time because they spent so much time on the script, making it, polishing it, that I wish they would have spent some more time kind of defining their own rules. For example, Ryan, you mentioned Twin Pine versus Lone Pine. So obviously everything he did back there made changes. But then there's questions on what the heck happened when he comes back to 85. Why, what caused those changes to happen? There's also the issue with him disappearing slowly. I mean, if you change something to where it doesn't happen, wouldn't you have immediately disappeared? Why does it happen so slowly? There's a lot of stuff that I wish they would just taken a few more minutes in the script to iron out, because then me and only me would be satisfied.
Okay, so clearly you don't like the aesthetic. Got it. Time travel movies are just not your thing.
Oh, that's not true.
I'm just messing with you. All right, Jay, what do you got?
Now we're getting the can of worms.
Well, I will say real quick, the best time travel scene ever is from Endgame last year, where they make fun of time travel movies. That is an amazing scene.
Dislikes. I don't know if this is a dislike. It's something I kind of mentioned earlier with how really aggressive Biff's character is. With he's real rapey, like in public, in front of people. But what's interesting to me is when I think back when I used to watch it, I didn't think much of it. And really, it's been the last handful of times I've watched it. I'm like, he is really
intense.
And just to be, he's the bad guy. He gets his lights knocked out because of it. He gets his comeuppance for it. So it's not like they didn't address it. I just think if this were filmed now, well, a lot of things would be different if it were filmed now. But I think that part would be toned down. I think he'd still be a jerk. He'd still be a bully. He'd still make moves on her. I just think that his sexual aggressiveness in the movie would be toned down. Like I said, I thought Thomas Wilson was great. He is the bad guy. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know if it's a dislike as much as I think as we grow as people and we start to get a better. There's a lot of old movies that are questionable now that from that era. Animal House. There's a date rape scene, borderline. That's kind of crazy. Revenge of the Nerds. They're putting cameras in a girl's. There's a lot of questionable stuff. So I think it's just at the changing times, it's made this thing stand out far more to me. And I know Scott was talking about Lorraine's character as well, so I'll pass that to him.
Well, and I was just going to say, if you want the epitome of how the 1980s is kind of questionable now, just go watch Porky's. That's all you have to do. Everything else is pale in comparison.
I put that as a potential movie for us to talk about because of that in the future.
Oh God, there's a lot that could be discussed, but no, and I think,
And I think of how much my dad loved that.
oh, my dad had it recorded on beta. He had Porky's and Porky's 2 on the same beta tape.
Our dads love that movie.
But no, I think you covered it. I mean, I agree. I tend to be. I'm a very liberal guy, and I am very much a supporter of everything that has happened in the past few years, and I think we need to continue down this path. But I also, as somebody who went to school to be a historian and doesn't use that degree for anything, I think we have to take stuff in historical context and understand that when these films were made, it was a different time, and we can look back at them and still enjoy them while also pointing out that there are questionable things in there, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to further discuss. Anybody else? I mean,
Even the sequels.
Let's talk sequels, because this is not my favorite Back to the Future.
Okay, so sequel talk. Okay, this movie is a great movie, almost perfect, but you've got Back to the Future 2 and Back to the Future 3. November 22nd, 1989, the second one came out. The third one got released May 25th, 1990. These movies were filmed back to back. First time it's been done in history of cinema. You actually get a preview of the third one at the end of the second movie. But Back to the Future 2 on Rotten Tomatoes at 65%, where Back to the Future 3 is 80%. So let's talk sequels. Jay, go ahead.
I don't disagree with part 2. For me is the low spot of the trilogy. I still love the movie, but for me it's the low spot. And the reason I think, these are fish out of water stories, and I just think it works better when they go back in time than when they go into the future. Because when you go into the future, it's easier to adapt because you're just updating your stuff. But trying to downgrade your lingo, your freaking watch that beeps in 1955, that I wouldn't even dawn on me that's something I wouldn't have in 1955. So I think it makes the fish out of water story work a little better. That being said, I love how for the fences they went with their expectation of 5 years ago. I think the thing that throws it off too is because it's hard to predict the future, and when the future is so drastically different than what I think as time went on, part 2 got less entertaining to me just because of their vision. Even though I think they got a lot of stuff right. There's flat screen TVs in there, and they communicate fate just like we're doing now. They do that in the movie. So they actually, the stupid Cubs won a World Series. Cheer it up, boys. So they got a lot of stuff right, but for me, it just, I don't know. It didn't hit as much for me. But I liked when they went back to 1955 again, and he's trying to dodge the first 1985 version of himself. Right? I like when it gets kind of tangled in there with that. So but I also love Trump Biff.
I'm gonna chime in on what you said about the future, everything that the whole movie is negated by the end of the third film. The future is not written; it's all based on choices. It was just a glimpse, But in the second movie, we hear about this car accident that Marty gets into, and his whole life changes, and it just kind of a spiral down. He gets fired from his job in the second movie, but he makes a choice at the end of the third movie when this race happens
against Flea
from Red Hot Chili Peppers. They race, and he sees that he would have hit a Rolls Royce, but he didn't do it. He made the choice not to. He was the bigger person. So the entire second movie is negated besides the 1955 stuff. So
it took 3 movies for Marty McFly to have any growth.
Right.
He had none in the first.
Yes, and that's actually the point I was going to make with the sequels, and I'll talk about it in a minute, because Ryan's on a roll, but I want to talk about the fact that none of these movies is about Marty. Not one of them.
Well, go for it. Go.
Well, so part one is about Crispin Glover's character, Dad McFly. We spend most of our time with that character, the growth of that character. If you ignore second version of 1985, the growth is all in that character. In part two, it's Biff's story. I mean, as you mentioned, we have 3 or 4 different Biffs floating around. It is absolutely Biff's story. And part 3, it is Doc Brown's story. So Marty is the audience moving along these films. But you're right, Marty has no growth in these films because he's not the protagonist. He is us, and the protagonists or antagonists are other characters throughout.
Can I chime in on that and say it's...
No, you may not.
Marty, well, screw you anyway. It's like Jay said, Marty is the journeyman, but he's experiencing the men in his life. You know, first it's his father in the first movie, and then, you know, he kind of saw how Biff was drawn to his mother in the first movie and what a reality would be with Biff as his father. And then, of course, you have, you know, his close friend, father figure in Doc Brown. So, it's his relationship with a patriarch, so to speak. I don't know if you want to go on that or enlighten. I don't know.
That's very good podcasting there.
Yeah.
No, you got good, done, sealed, delivered.
Part 3.
Let's talk 3.
Well, real quick, because I didn't get to talk part 2. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick.
Part 2.
Part 2 is the weakest of the films, but I think what I like the most about part 2 is, Jay, you mentioned, you know, having to rewrite things a second time. That is fun. But apocalyptic Trump Biff 1985 is really fun to watch.
It is.
Just it's like the, you know, what happens if the bad guy wins? And it is just so it's just a fun little 20 minutes of the film. And it also is where, as much as I was complaining about time travel, it's where they start defining their rules of time travel. We have the scene of Doc with the chalkboard talking about the tangent universe, which J.J. Abrams will steal and make Star Trek movies with 20 years later. So, I mean, it's that little chunk of the film is fun. I think I agree with you guys. The 2015 parts of the film, except for the fact that the Cubs won, only 1 year off, kind of is the slow part of the film, and really it doesn't hold my interest, and I don't think it ever really did. But once we get out of 2015, the movie does get much better.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Because I just realized I haven't talked about part 2. The only thing I like about part 2 is it gave me Jaws 19. That's it. But Scott, like you said, I really enjoyed.
This time, it's personal.
It's really, really personal. But no, just the imagery of Trump Tower. I mean, Biff Tower. With you know, we see Hill Valley's their town square. You know, 1955, it's great. 1985, it's kind of dilapidated. But in Biff's 1985, it is just a land of debauchery. And in the background, when you see his tower, there is gas refiner and just fire spewing out. So, I mean, it's great imagery from Zemekis and Gale and how they wrote. Yeah. So,
well, and Ryan, you mentioned that you like the fact that it looks like they pulled a lot from part 1 to make 2 and 3. And I would argue they really only had the script for part 1. They didn't have a plan for 2 and 3. But the real fun thing about 2 and 3 is that they absolutely have a plan, because obviously they're filming back to back. So you have so many little Easter eggs planted throughout 2 that pay off in 3. That is really good writing.
Agree. We'll get to that after we talk about the third, if this was planned or not, and then I have my question, but we'll get to that. So the third movie, Scott, Jay went first last time, so let's talk about your favorite, part 3.
Yeah, though I feel that this is a better film than the other 2, in the fact that the story is much more, honestly, fun. I think it moves quicker. We immediately jump into the film, and then we are in 1885 or 1885. I'm sorry, very, very quickly. We don't spend a lot of time building up because obviously we've already been through all this already and we know what's going on, so we can dive right in. But the train scene at the end is amazing. It would be extremely hard to do better than the clock tower scene in part 1, and they did it with the train scene in part 3.
Agreed.
And the reason for me why, aside from the fact that I think it actually truly is a better made film, the reason why part 3 has a special place in my heart is because it's one of the first films I can truly remember seeing in the theater. I was 7 years old when it was in the theater that summer, and we went on a field trip for my summer daycare thing. And so it's a special movie for me because it's one of the first ones I saw in the theater that I can truly remember seeing on the big screen.
Jay, thoughts on 3?
Yeah, well, just to riff on that, those first few movie theater experiences like us movie nerds have, man, it's amazing how implanted those memories are and how much they make you like those movies even more just because the experience they presented you. But man, part 3 I really, really like. And I think what's unfortunate is I feel like for more casual viewer, people that aren't as into movies as us and other people like us, I feel like it gets a little bit buried because it's a Western. And I think that's really, really unfortunate because it's a fantastic Western and just a great adventure story. And like we said, what's his Mad Dog Tannen is so good. He's so good. I think he steals the show. But the continuity of all 3 movies, they all feel the same. They all have, I don't know. They really did a great job of making it feel very fluid, even though I'm with Scott. I think they had the first one because if they had the others written out, they never would have put Jennifer in the time machine at the end of the first movie because that's why they had all sorts of trouble trying to write her kind of out of the movie. But yeah, it's such a great adventure that they go on. No, that's it.
One other thing I would say on part 3 is I think the comedy is better in part 3. There's so much, like the one I'm just coming in my head right now is when they're talking about when they're going to have their shootout and their duel, and Mad Dog says, "I do my killing before breakfast," and then Marty goes, "Well, I do my killing after breakfast." It's like little stuff like that. It's great.
That line is because I watched it an hour before we started. I was like, I gotta watch 3. I want to get to. It's been a minute since I've watched that one. And I laughed very, very hard at that line, and I wanted to remember that line to bring it up because that was great. And the part where Mad Dog starts shooting at his feet, and I want to see you dance, and he starts doing the moonwalk.
Speaking of dated,
my favorite comedic moment is the wake up juice. And
oh my God.
I said it would wake him up. I didn't say right away.
How many did he have? One.
How many has he had? He hasn't had any.
That man can't hold his liquor.
I'm in agreement with all you guys. I think 3 is a fantastic movie. But I enjoyed the parallel of the movie between 1 and 3. And this is what I mean. In 1, it was supposed to be Marty getting knocked out by his father or, in a play, that they rehearsed. But really it was George knocking out Biff Tannen. In the 3rd movie, you have Marty beating a descendant of Biff Tannen. And so it's Marty saw his dad come into his own. Now it was time for Marty to come his own. So essentially, this journey that he's been on, he's really coming to terms with who he is and the fact that he doesn't have to fight. But he does because it just needs to be done. Because sometimes you have to do it, but you can make the choice not to. And that's where Marty's journey pays off. He comes into his own, he stands up to the bad guy, but he was able to do it in 1855 and move on from then. I think that parallelism is what makes the 3rd movie so good. Scott, I saw you take your mute off.
No, because my kids stopped screaming in the background, so I figured I could unmute myself again.
Oh, okay.
But no, I agree. I think that 5 minutes of character building that Marty has in this is wonderful. I agree. That 5 minutes is great.
So, okay.
What a backhanded compliment.
Before we wrap up,
At
sequel
least you
talk,
tried.
Before we wrap up sequel talk, we've got two things to do. Was this planned? Did they create the first movie? But when they created the first movie, it was like, what if we do a 2 and a 3? Or did they do the first? I'm like, okay, this made a lot of money. Let's do 2 and 3 really quick. Jay, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I think they made the first movie, and I think money was involved, but I also think they felt confident in their story.
Okay. Scott?
Well, and it wasn't even really quick. I mean, yes, they took a year and a half to film these because they were filming 2 of them, but they took 5 years or 4 years between part 1 and part 2 and then part 3. So there wasn't a plan here. It was they made buku bucks, and Universal's like, let's make another one. Well, actually, let's make 2. But again, that's why I think 2 and 3 have a stronger throughput, even though I think 2 is the weakest film, because they sat down and wrote both scripts. This is, this is why, tangent for a moment, but this is why I really love television nowadays. We've really gotten away from like you have to fill 26 episodes in a season. With streaming, you can now sit down and say, I have a story for 10 episodes, and I'm going to write out the 10 episodes, and it's going to be much better. And so this is the same thing here. When you have a finite amount of time and you know exactly where you want to end your films, you're able to be much stronger in the storytelling department. So, yeah.
Can I have one point on that?
Go ahead.
I just thinking of this as a trilogy. I was thinking about the actual timeline for Marty McFly, and that's like the craziest month of his life.
Yeah.
Because everywhere he is, it's like a week.
It's a day. It's like, but in 1985, it's one day. He's just
yeah. I just mean he spends a week in 55, a week in 2015, a week in 55, a week in 1885. That's a month. It's the craziest month of all time.
He's going to have some interesting therapy bills after this is all said and done.
Well, and what's the radiation?
Hey, they got rid of the plutonium after part 1. Now it uses Mr. Fusion, so we're fine.
Which only powers the power circuits, doesn't fuel the car, even though in the second one he said, I need fuel for the... I'm just saying.
All right, let's do what we always do here on Flashbacks and rank the movies in the franchise. This is something that Scott did when I was just a minor co-host with him. So let's rank them. I'm going to go first. I'm going to say number 1, but very, very closely followed by number 3, and of course, 2 is last. Jay?
1, 3, 2.
And Scott?
I'm going to go 3, 1, the cartoon, and then 2.
That's right.
Is the
Saturday
cartoon
morning
better?
Cartoon.
I don't know.
1991.
You got Dan Castellaneta, who did the voice of Doc Brown.
But they
so
used
Homer
the
Simpson.
train. It was a continuation of part 3. They used the train.
And it was Jules and Verne.
Did Jules and Verne, one of those really wants you to look at it, and never mind.
Right, yep.
We y'all know. Just go YouTube it. Go YouTube the kid.
Okay.
Just leave it at that.
Before we get on an impact of the film, there's a question that I have, and this is a very popular question when it comes to Back to the Future, and I posed it to both my co-hosts, but I want to see what they say before we talk about impact. But at the end of this film, you have Marty looking at his new truck, but then his doting parents, George and Lorraine, are looking on, and they just kind of smile and turn. Do they know that Marty was the kid from 1955 that came and saved their relationship, or were they just happy that Marty's back? Let's get your thoughts, guys. Jay, I'll let you go first.
I do not think they knew he was the kid from 1955. One, Bob Gale, the writer producer, has stated as such that was never the intention. The other reason is he explains that as he was there for 1 week. He did not see them every day, and that was 30 years prior to where they are in 1985. So I graduated not 30 years ago, and there's definitely things in my life that where if I would have seen somebody for a week, they're not in my memory anymore. Granted, he had a big impact. I am not of the belief that they knew who he was. I think they were just happy.
Scott?
I'll start out by saying I agree with Crispin Glover. I think the second 1985 scenes are pretty piss poor and were not written well, so that's a problem. I think if they were written better, we would actually have a better answer to this. But I get the idea that you don't know somebody from your 30 years in your past, but you also have those flashbulb memories that stick with you. And yeah, you can argue, okay, they just kind of remembered the name, so they went ahead and named their kid after it. But Marty's the third kid and the second son. So if you were just going to name your kid after somebody because you remember the name, why wouldn't you name the first kid? You know, the one who's a schmuck in both 1985s. He's both a loser in both cases. One, he's a pizza guy, and the other guy, he plays tennis way too much. But why wouldn't you name the first son Marty at that point?
It is a family name. We find out in the third one.
Yep.
Well,
from the 1800s, which I would not know anybody in my family from the 1800s.
I've complained about the time travel rules. I think if they would have gone with the time loop idea that everything has happened already, it would be a much stronger story. And I think part 2 and part 3, that's what they're going for, is the time loop. Unfortunately, part 1 doesn't do that.
Yeah. I'm going to say that they knew. They knew it was him. Just in the mere fact that Crispin Glover is a science fiction writer. And the cover of his book is very much like the scenario that happened previously in the movie. He believes in the unknown. And the things that are not explainable. And he can't explain it, but he just knows that his son helped helped save his marriage. Bite me if you will, I don't care. It's just, it kind of makes the story a happier ending to me in my mind. Okay.
The real big question is, the question everyone needs to answer is, does the uncle stay out of prison in the second round, or is he just screwed no matter what?
Probably screwed no matter what.
The future's not set.
It is Reagan's 1985. He's probably in prison.
All right. Impact. This is a movie that has a huge impact. I'm just going to start off by saying October 5th, 2015 was designated Back to the Future Day. This movie has its own date in history set aside as Back to the Future Day. Pepsi came out with a Pepsi Perfect, which we saw in the second movie. Universal released a trailer for Jaws 19 on this day. I mean, just the amount of things that this movie brought forth. We still don't have hoverboards, but we do have self-tying laces, or so Nike claims.
We don't have hovering hoverboards.
Right. But as a movie as a whole, this movie really set the bar for comedies, for sci-fi, for just great family. I mean, I would call this a family film. It really has that lasting impact because it is still memorable. But yeah, let's hear your guys' thoughts, Jay.
It's a family film, especially if you enjoy dating your family members.
In that sense, that's what I meant. Yes.
Well, to be fair, he didn't call her hot. He almost called his mom hot.
He took her on a date. I know he had to. He was forced into it, but he took her on a date.
Right.
So, just a quick note on that: when they were trying to pitch this to movie studio or to studios, they could not get anyone to buy it. They said it's too family friendly. They said, okay. They all said, go to Disney. They went to Disney, and Disney said, he's going to make out with his sister. We can't produce this. Or his mom. We can't produce this at Disney.
This was obviously before Michael Eisner showed up. Because he wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, the impact. I even just think dialogue. Like, what do you say when somebody's not paying attention or not getting something? Hello, McFly, anybody in there? I mean, that's part of our everyday lexicon. Somebody's not paying attention. You want to be a jerk to them.
Well,
roads where we're going, we don't need road, and you're trying to say something impressive. So even just some of the dialogue we use. I mentioned earlier, DeLorean's not a DeLorean anymore. It's a time machine. Yeah. If it doesn't have all the circuits in it, it's a future time machine. It's not a DeLorean.
And if it has white walls, it's a Western time machine.
Yeah. And just the highest grossing movie of all time to help guide viewers through. They did make fun of the time travel, but to help guide viewers on a basic level through time travel, they used Back to the Future to explain it to people and to, say, well, no, that's not time travel. Yes,
Then they called it
travel.
BS.
Right. But they used that movie as the guide for the viewer, and all the viewers were going, oh yeah, like Back to the Future. I get it. And they go, no, not like Back.
And they
But the
used that
fact
hard
that it's
as well, too.
referenced so heavily in Avengers Endgame should tell you all you need to know. So yeah, we know the impact of this. And with the second one, the future stuff, a lot of, you're right, we don't have hoverboards, but the hoverboards with wheels, I mean, what was the inspiration?
Right.
Flat screen TV. This movie inspired a lot of some of the technologies that we have now. Hopefully, I don't want flying cars. That scares the hell out of me. But everything else,
people can't drive as it is.
Right.
Why would you?
Self-driving flying cars. I'm maybe that's okay.
There's a special place in hell for those who can't make a right turn at a normal speed.
Scott, impact for you.
Yeah, you guys covered it. So I think this is probably the second best trilogy of all time, and the first trilogy being Star Trek 2, 3, and 4. I will fight you on that.
I'm a Lord of the Rings guy. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you're okay.
Say it. Say it.
As long as you don't say The Hobbit, we're fine. Because those were a travesty.
No, yeah.
In
his defense, they didn't give him any pre-production time.
In his defense, he could have said no.
That's true. That's true.
It's like, when somebody argues, because I have to do my one DC bash in every flashbacks. It's when somebody argues, well, the reason why Superman blew up Metropolis and Man of Steel is because it was his first day. That's because the writers made it his first day. You didn't have to write it that way. But no, the impact is it's continues to be there. There is a Back to the Future musical, so if there's a musical, it must be important, right?
Right.
Army of Darkness has one.
Yep.
Are you serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I am. Oh God, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole now because
I think you gotta wear. I think they give you stuff because they like splatter blood.
Yep.
Which this is totally related to Back to the Future.
Right.
Splattering blood.
Army of Darkness is the best of the Evil Deads.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a reason why Ash is my character for the Front Row Network.
Oh my gosh, I might have to find this out now. This is you have blown my mind.
All right, well, that is going to wrap it up for here. Wow,
the train wreck is over.
Loved Back to the Future. Let's talk about Evil Dead.
We're about ready to go into Clayton Ravine right now. Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
It's Eastwood Ravine now.
Oh yes,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's gonna do it for.
It was Shonash Ravine first. Shonash, then Clayton, then Eastwood.
Right.
Sorry, Ryan. I was just trying to throw you off, and I think it worked fine.
It did. Let's talk what we got coming up because we are going to be done here in just a few seconds. Jay, what do you got coming up for the Front Row Network?
Well, we have our streaming service battle episode that we're going to be recording here on Tuesday. So Netflix versus Hulu versus HBO versus Disney. We got a judge. It should be a good time. I think we're all in agreement. As long as we're getting rid of super expensive cable, we're all happy where we can pick and choose what we watch. But it should be a good time. And if you're on Facebook, look up the Front Row Flashbacks podcast group, and you can request to join, and we'll have discussions on there about future episodes and just a bunch of nerds talking movies. And working on getting Instagram and Twitter accounts going for Front Row Flashbacks.
Thank you, Jay. Jay has done awesome setting that up for us for Flashbacks, so greatly appreciated. I myself am recording a podcast for the greatest movie ever made. I hope they have 4 hours set aside just for me to talk. But I'll be doing the classic episode about Jaws, celebrating its 45th anniversary. And then Jay and I are going to be talking about a classic comedy of the 1980s, Caddyshack, with special guest Aaron McCabe, who knows a little bit about what it means to be a caddy because she was one. Scott, you got anything coming up for the Front Row Network?
I do one of these about once every year, so I guess I'll see you all in 2021. But poor Brandon. I've been wanting to bring back Zonasodes, and so is he. And he actually messaged me today. He messages me these little passive-aggressive messages every few months. And today it was, people are still commenting on our Zonasodes YouTube videos 3 years later. I'm like, cool. Maybe we should do something about that. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. I've been a little busy doing way too much stupid stuff. So maybe I'll be around. We'll see.
Well, when Jay and I get the schedule figured out for 2021, we'll get you the list and you can figure out which one you want to hop in on.
Masters of the Universe.
I'll look into it. I'm still waiting to do Willow Man. But it's coming out on Disney Plus, so.
There's a Willow TV show coming on Disney Plus, too.
Yeah. But that's going to wrap it up here for us at the Front Row. With me tonight has been
Jay Hoffman.
And the Godfather himself,
Eric Stoltz.
Thank you very much for listening. You can catch us out on Facebook at the Front Row Network and, of course, the Front Row Network Flashbacks. And that's all I'm going to plug because I think the rest of the sites are down. But yeah.
So nothing has changed since 2019. I love you, Jeremy.
I was looking at the Front Row Network and I was like, please see this site. So
it's all on the NPR site now.
Yeah, that's what I'll plug. NPR site. Go to nprillinois.com and check us out on the Community Voices page. And then you can search just for Flashback there. But that's
and I didn't swear.
Yeah, that was awesome. We appreciate you guys listening to us, and we will see you in the front row.